when I suddenly got pulled into a meeting with my manager, and I was presented with some tweets that I made, and it was like I'd done something kind of criminal. So I was told in this meeting that they didn't feel comfortable working with me based on these tweets. And they brought in an external investigator to meet with me to determine, and straight away the kind of flavour of the accusation was that I was homophobic and transphobic. Even when I mentioned the cash review and I said, we should all be following the cash review, they kind of said, well, I haven't heard anything about it,
Really?
Yeah, they said, well, management hasn't said anything, so, If at any moment somebody could complain about the fact that I don't agree with gender ideology, and then I get put through some investigation process, really I can't continue to work in the NHS.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Peter Whittle. Now, my guest this week is not really a guest in the usual sense. Amy Gallagher, of course, you see every week on Newspeak. She's also hosted it from time to time. And in fact, first spoke to Amy on this channel when she first locked horns with the NHS about 3 years ago. Amy, welcome back to this particular show.
Yeah.
You are about to start, or you're in the middle of another legal wrangle.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about it?
Well, I didn't think my life would go in this direction, but it
Yeah.
has. This is to do with my practice as a nurse. So I'm a mental health nurse. So despite all what happened to me at the Tavistock when I was trained to be a psychotherapist, I still remained in the NHS working as a nurse. They knew about what had happened to me. They knew I was in the media speaking out about DEI and that I had a social media account and everything, and they were fine with that. What happened was, it was about a year ago when I suddenly got pulled into a meeting with my manager, and I was presented with some tweets that I made, and it was like I'd done something kind of criminal. The tweets were, what had happened is a patient who identifies as transgender and non-binary had kind of gone onto Google, looked me up, kind of done some digging on my Twitter, and said that they felt distressed by a couple of the tweets that I made.
Yeah.
So the tweets were, there was a picture, maybe we could show it, of...
Yeah, let's show it up here.
Yeah, of the Progress Pride flag, the one with all the races and transgenderism on it. And it had the McDonald's sign all over it, and it was being waved outside of McDonald's. So I put that picture on Twitter, and I just put the word hell above it. So I was, I was kind of mocking the fact that this big corporation, purveyor of junk food and very capitalist, kind of synonymous with capitalism, was adopting this radical ideology, which a lot of people have issues with because of the harms done to children and, the harms done to women and so on and so forth. And obviously it's very political. It's kind of promotes progressivism and intersectionality. And I just thought the combination of those two things was, hellish. So that's why I put the word hell. I obviously wasn't mocking any group of people. I was making a kind of comment about, I guess, woke capitalism, And the only other thing that I said that they took issue with was in a kind of response about the concept of non-binary. And it was in response to a work of art, a music video, and people were talking about non-binary, and I said non-binary essentially means ugly. I wasn't talking about non-binary people. I don't think there are non-binary people, but the concept is to me non-binary is kind of an erosion of categories, and when you do away with standards and categories, everything degenerates. So that was kind of the point that I was making. So it was those two tweets that the patient took issue with. And of course, the NHS very quickly sided with the patient. And then some of my other colleagues, when they found out about what the patient was upset about, they also made complaints about me. So I was told in this meeting that they didn't feel comfortable working with me based on these tweets. And they brought in an external investigator to meet with me to determine, and straight away the kind of flavour of the accusation was that I was homophobic and transphobic. And I was explaining, no, I'm against gender ideology, I'm against the politics of progressivism, I don't have any issue with gay people, or I haven't said anything about gay people. I haven't said anything about transgender people. But I don't agree with some of the ideas under this ideology. I don't think that people can be born in the wrong body. I don't think young people should be given puberty blockers. I think we should be going by the Cass review in response to all of these things. I don't think men should be allowed in women's spaces. That's why I'm against this. So I explained all this, and they were kind of looking at me like I was talking gobbledygook, really. It was quite remarkable. Even when I mentioned the Cass review, and I said, we should all be following the Cass review, they kind of said, well, I haven't heard anything about it,
Really?
Yeah. They said, well, management hasn't said anything, so, and yeah, it was almost as like, even though I was trying to explain to them my views, it was like, it was almost as though they were looking at me that underneath I must be kind of bigoted, and this is all just stuff I'm saying to kind of get away with it. I don't think people realise how, if you're not working in the NHS, how kind of captured it is, even now to this day. I mean, this was a year ago, but as I said, the Cass review had happened and people were talking about this issue more and more, but it was still very much, there's this idea, if you challenge this flag or this ideology, you must be a bigot. There's no other reason for it. So even when I met with this external investigator, straight away, this is supposed to be a neutral interview, straight away she was asking me questions like, do you think you've betrayed patient trust by criticising gender ideology? And I was saying, well, no, it's my right to criticise the ideology, And I was explaining, look, I don't believe that people can be born in the wrong body, and I don't think we should be telling patients that because it's not evidence-based. And she even said to me, do you think it's that a patient could trust you, given your view that you don't think that they could be born in the wrong body? And I was like, but this is a metaphysical claim and it's not proven. I don't know. It was just very bizarre. And it was a very hostile interview. And what they did is because they had complaints about me, they moved me from my work with patients. They said that they wanted to investigate me, and I was put in an admin role. And I was actually told that my people that I worked with didn't feel comfortable working with me. So I was thinking, well, if I moved back from this admin role, I'm going to be moving back to people that don't want to work with me. So that's when I just thought I'm going to have to resign, because I can't go back to a team of people that think I'm, some kind of monster. Yeah. It's going to be horrible. It's very stressful. Obviously, I had all the stress of what happened to me at the Tavistock, and I was just thinking, I just want out of this. So I kind of realised that, I guess it was something that I knew could happen, but when it happened, I just thought, well, I can't really work in the NHS anymore then, because I have spoken about these issues. I run a whole kind of mayoral campaign called Stand Up to Woke, and I talk about DEI. So if at any moment somebody could complain about the fact that I don't agree with gender ideology, and then I get put through some investigation process, really I can't continue to work in the NHS. So yeah, I obviously I had, because of my legal case of Tavistock, I had access to lawyers, and I said, what do you think of this? And they were saying, well, it's discrimination on the basis of gender critical beliefs. You're allowed to have those beliefs.
Oh, right. Okay.
So they said, you've got quite a good case there actually. And I just thought, okay, we could do it again. I'm gonna.
So this is the basis of the case, therefore, is wrongful dismissal.
Wrongful dismissal,
right.
Yeah, and discrimination on the basis of gender critical beliefs.
Yeah.
They were treating me in a very hostile way, and it wasn't neutral, and there was assumptions of homophobia and transphobia and all of this, despite the fact that I was literally just criticising gender a political ideology, and it's my right to disagree with an ideology.
Hello, please excuse this brief interruption, but I'd be really grateful if you could please hit the subscribe button and subscribe to our channel. Our mission is vitally important, and we must grow this channel to ensure that our content reaches the biggest possible audience. The best way to do this is for you to subscribe. It's totally free. And in addition to subscribing, if you're able to donate or join our membership scheme, please click on the link in the description or visit our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. We've got great plans ahead, but we can't do it without your support. From only £4 per month, you'll receive a range of perks and benefits, including exclusive content. Thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned this was a year ago.
Yeah.
It might clearly be a technical thing. Why is it now you can just talk about it?
Yeah, because I didn't get the outcome of the investigation until recently. So it's taken 14 months for them to get back to me. My lawyer advised me not to say anything until we know the outcome of the investigation. And they've kind of said, well, they haven't really said anything. They've said so much time has passed that we're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
They've said that, well, technically I'm in the clear in that they're not going to escalate it. So I'm not going to be, my nursing registration isn't under threat. But they haven't said, you didn't do anything wrong either. They've just said we're dropping it. So, yeah, that's why I was able to talk about it now, because we were just waiting for so long. And when we initiated kind of legal proceedings against them, we thought that might make them do something. But it took a whole year before they finalised what they were going to do. So for the last year, I've sort of not really known if they were going to escalate this to the Nursing and Midwifery Council, and then I'd have to go through further, disciplinary kind of things. So, yeah, I've had to sort of come to terms with the fact that my, career in healthcare is sort of, I can't really do it anymore.
Real strain, though, actually.
Yeah.
Being under.
Yeah, it's been very stressful. I mean, I loved being a nurse. I was very good at it for a long time, and before this extreme DEI came in, it was, I was happy doing it. But I just, people say that, the NHS is our national religion. Well, within the NHS, gender ideology is the religion. Like, you cannot question it still. And I can't do that. I can't go along with it, especially because in my area of mental health, I was treating, lots of teenagers, young people who were saying that they were transgender. And this was not being challenged. They didn't have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. We weren't asking their parents about what had been agreed. We were just accepting the fact that they were transgender. They've said it, right, their pronouns have changed. Okay, we just go along with it. Not interrogating it, not expressing any curiosity about it. And I was thinking, but the CAS review says you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to just socially transition someone, and it could be harmful, and you have to think very carefully about it. And I was having more and more patients come through that were just, I could see, clinicians who, that the child was, traumatized, autistic, and they were saying, for example, if they were a girl, they were saying that they were a boy, and straight away the clinician was just calling them he and going, and I just think this is not, even without even discussing it with the parents. So I thought, I could see it before this investigation happened. I could see it was going in the direction of, I don't know if I can work in this area anymore, because it's just getting, and then it happened, and I thought, well, it's kind of something was bound to happen. And then when it did, I just thought, okay, well, that's that then.
Could you transfer to the private sector?
Yeah, I've done that. I have done that. I've tried working in Bupa, and I do some ad hoc work now, but not in the NHS.
But are they, as captured in the private sector?
No, it's a bit looser. So they don't have all the influence necessarily of Stonewall and pumping out the flag and everything. So it's,
Actually, you mentioned Stonewall there. I saw a tweet that you did quite recently, a post on X. And it's a very good question you were posing. Why did these people wield such influence?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question I don't necessarily have an answer to, but it baffles me. I've worked in so many NHS trusts where they will do the whole pronoun thing. They'll tell staff to ask patients their pronouns. They'll put up flags everywhere. They'll encourage staff to wear lanyards and badges about transgenderism, all of this stuff. And you look into it and you see that they're trying to obtain a gold award from Stonewall.
Yeah.
It's all about their workplace equality index, where there's a list of Stonewall's kind of top NHS trusts, and if you really go hard on this stuff, you get points. And I just think I don't understand why they care. Why has this kind of obtaining approval from Stonewall become the kind of primary aim of the NHS? I don't understand it. And what it means is that it just means the NHS people get completely captured, trusts get completely captured, and the staff don't realise that this is all political. So they just think, oh, this must be the new thing that, they just feel, oh, there's been an update in terms of our knowledge, and we now know that, we should be calling people, asking them their pronouns. They don't realise that it's coming from a real political agenda. And when that stuff is being pushed so strongly, people must think, oh, I've got to get with the times. This is a whole new thing, and I've got to be tolerant. I've got to understand it. And they don't realise the ideas and the activism behind it. And the activism is still so strong in the NHS. They're still bringing in training providers that are very activist. And so it just goes on and on, all of this stuff. I mean, I had situations where, for example, part of my job was we covered 4 hospitals, and if a patient came in having taken an overdose or harmed themselves, I would have to go in and assess them. And sometimes the information I would be given their pronouns and their name, and the name wasn't what's on the system because it's their new name that they've given themselves, and I don't know what their sex is, I just know what their pronouns are. And then I'd go into A&E and I'm looking for this person, and they'd say, well, what's their name? And it turns out the name that I've got is different from what their name is, and the pronouns don't tell me. I don't know anything, and it's just insane. And you see on patient notes, people writing they, them, and all of this stuff.
Yes.
And it's the culture is so deep in on this stuff.
So, I mean, basically, it's the same as we've discussed in another context before. You've got this mixture of ideological capture plus a fair amount of ignorance.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I mean, I think it's worth saying that a lot of people who follow this stuff, we see the Supreme Court ruling, we see the banning of puberty blockers, and we think, if you're on the outside, you think, right, it's really changing. But what you don't understand is that most staff in the NHS don't necessarily know about these things, or if they hear about it, they don't care. And it's not disseminated down, so there's no kind of training or awareness about it. So if you talk to someone in the NHS about the Cass review or the Supreme Court ruling, the likelihood is they'll say, what's that? Did I heard of it? Yeah. Well, if they have heard of it, they say, yeah, but no one said anything. We don't have to, so what? So unless there is active training to get people to realise that what they've been taught for the last 10 years is kind of rubbish about, gender identity, and you've got to accept someone's transgender identity immediately, and all of this stuff, unless they are told not to do that, it's going to keep happening, because so many, I think if you get a group of people, like most people in the NHS are quite left-leaning. There are a lot of women work in the NHS, and it's very hard when you're working in a team of people. All it takes is for one person who is kind of pro-trans, and nobody will challenge it, and that's that whole team kind of captured. Yeah. So, I don't know how we get out of it, but there is still stuff happening in the NHS that it would shock people in terms of how these issues are being approached. I
mean, my perception is not just on this issue, but actually on a number. We had the whole Gaza thing recently. There's a kind of general politicisation that's happened across basically the private sector.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, any reform in any shape or form will be resisted on political grounds, won't it, as well?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it never goes, like in my case, it never goes the other way. So if for example, if I was expressing very pro-trans views on Twitter, and I was maybe making fun of TERFs or people who are gender critical, and a patient complained that they didn't like that, the NHS will totally take my side. It's only if you've got the sort of wrong views that they will really turn on you. Yeah. And, the idea, I was expressing my views on social media on an account that's not linked to my nursing. I didn't say it at work. It was about ideology. And yet that was enough for them to, put me through a disciplinary. And yet you will see people expressing pro-Gaza views, wearing lanyards, wearing Black Lives Matter, putting Black Lives Matter across at the bottom of their email, all of that stuff. And that's totally fine. And if anybody takes issue with it, they're the problem. Yeah. So you can be very politicised in one direction, but if you have the political views that are not accepted, then bricks will fall down on you.
Well, it's like this conversation that a lot of our kind of colleagues are having at the moment is, is this the end of woke?
Yeah.
And you know what? It doesn't appear to be, does it? I mean, it's too embedded.
No, we've got more, like in terms of my case, I've been told by my lawyers that I've got a strong chance of winning because we've had so many legal milestones now.
Yeah.
We've had the Supreme Court ruling, we've had Mayor for starter, and that does mean I've got a good chance of winning. But the point is, and this is why I'm kind of bringing this case, is that I shouldn't have to be put through a year-long investigation for being against gender ideology. Yeah. That in itself shouldn't be happening, and it's going to keep happening because the culture isn't changing. And none of this, I don't think it will change until that people are made to do it. Like you'll be told if you do this, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to, but that's not going to happen. Certainly not under Labour. So they're going to still carry on. And
So how can you just give us a brief overview of your first case, the reason that you came on? What stage is that at, Amy?
Yeah. So I've got a. It's a very big case because it's in this second case is in the employment tribunal, which is the stakes aren't as high because if I lose, I don't have to pay their costs. But my first case against Tavistock's in the county court. So if I lose, their side has wrapped up costs of about $500,000. So if I lose, I'd have to pay their costs. So I would effectively be bankrupt if I lose. So it's a huge. I knew that when I went into it, but it's kind of been hanging over me for all that time. But it's I have a conference coming up soon about it. I think it's going to go to trial because they're not showing any indication that they're going to settle. And I think it will maybe be in about a year or so. So I should be getting a date for trial in July. Right. But it's still ongoing. I'm still being put through kind of like meetings and disciplinary meetings. They were going to do last year. I was invited to a kind of panel to determine whether I can become a psychotherapist or not, and then they cancelled it, and I've had to wait another year just for them to get back to me about it. So this is, it is the punishment. That the process is the punishment because these things go on like 5 times longer than you can anticipate. So they're very grueling and it's tough. Do you think that you've become known now in the NHS for these things? I'm not saying frankly it'd be a good thing if you are, but you are now sort of they must know who you are. Yeah, a little bit. They could obviously Google me, so it's made it virtually impossible for me to work in the NHS. It's actually this point on the current case, or the one that's just started. You mentioned that someone went in and had a good old look around. Yeah. So who would that person, you don't have to give anything away, but who would that person be? Is it someone who therefore obviously knows? Was it kind of vexatiously broad? I guess. The tweet that they found was like a response that I made 2 years ago. Yes. So they must have typed in words to try and find things that were incriminating and then use against me. And the NHS is so much on the side of people who say that they're transgender, but that cannot be questioned. You're seeing it with other nurses at the moment. There's the cases of nurses who don't want to change in changing rooms with doctors that say that they're men, but that say that they're women, and the NHS protects the man and not the female nurse. So there's all of that stuff happening, and it's become the thing that you can't challenge. They really back the transgender phenomenon. There was in fact this very morning in the Telegraph a story which again gives the lie to this idea that somehow woke is on the way out, isn't it? This is about kids, wasn't it? So it's about these so this is post the Cass review, and it's about the treatments that's now being offered to young people who under the age of 10 who have symptoms of gender dysphoria and need treatment. So the treatment would be, it can't be puberty blockers anymore because that's been banned, but the treatment would be talking therapy. But there was, to begin with, it was agreed that they shouldn't be seeing children under the age of 7 because it was just too young. And under that age, you just, your mind isn't, you need to just wait and let's see how the child is. But because of activist pressure, they got rid of that. So they are treating children who are nursery age, who people think that they're transgender or that they have gender dysphoria, and it's usually for things like they want to play with toys of the opposite sex, and that's enough to they're being given talking therapy for that.
Well, that would have done for me then as a kid.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Yeah.
So many people, take an interest in out of just curiosity, in.
It's very, very regressive, isn't it? This whole thing. It's like, oh, he must be a girl, he likes, dolls and stuff.
I know, it's really bizarre, and I think you need to question what's going on in the parents' minds that think that this is a problem. I mean, a lot of people have been brainwashed now into kind of looking for things that aren't there and seeing things that they want to see. And unfortunately, all of this stuff is being projected onto children's behaviour, and they're the ones that are going to be suffering. I think we're going to have a whole generation of young people at some point that will talk about this madness that was done to them. It's crazy. But it's the activists are still finding a way to push this stuff, and it's all because they push this idea that you can be born in the wrong body. So if you are born in the wrong body, then you would notice that at a young age, right? Because that's how you're born. So because they believe that, then they have to say that, well, a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old could be gender dysphoric and all of this stuff. And it's just madness.
I mean, this whole idea of being born in the wrong body as well sort of tends to suggest, therefore, that these people must be very devout religiously, for example. They must believe there is a soul or something that somehow just slips into the wrong body.
It's a metaphysical claim. That's why I say, like, when you see all these transgender pride flags across the NHS, they are pushing a religious belief. That's how I view it. It's a claim about the body and the soul, which I don't believe in. I don't think a soul can be put. I don't think God can put the wrong soul in the wrong body. I don't really understand what that means or how you could determine that. But it is a new religion, and I don't think people realise that. And their beliefs aren't interrogated enough. So even when I was asking them these questions in this interview process, I was saying, how can you be born in the wrong body? It's like they've never thought about it before. They just accept it, and they don't think anything below it. That's what we've been told.
What is the status, by the way, now of the term gender dysphoria? Is that considered? I always thought that was for a long time considered a bit banned,
Yeah, so there was gender identity disorder to begin with, and then political pressure from activists said, well, you shouldn't call it a disorder, right? So then they changed it to gender dysphoria. And then there was pressure from transgender activists to say, well, it shouldn't even be a mental illness. But then there's this kind of, but then they are seeking help for their distress. So it's a bit confusing what they want. It is still known as gender dysphoria, but I would say, I've been working in the psychiatric profession for a long time, and you very rarely see someone with that particular diagnosis. It's quite rare. Even if they're as people would previously say, a cross-dresser or whatever, they're non-conformist in their gender, they don't necessarily have a gender dysphoric presentation. And all of the people that I was seeing that were calling themselves transgender, and everybody was accepting that they were transgender, when you look on their notes and their diagnosis, it may say depression, anxiety, but they didn't have that diagnosis of gender dysphoria. So it's just this, it's kind of, there is this diagnosis, but then there's this whole cultural and social thing that's kind of connected to it, but not really, where anybody can say they're transgender. And it doesn't necessarily have to have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. So, especially with young people, because when they present at services for the first time, of course, they don't have a diagnosis like that. And it takes quite a while to obtain a diagnosis. So, it's very strange that the mental health profession has so many contradictions.
Well, you made actually a program for us here, didn't you? Heresies, our documentary series, which was about the kind of capture of, well, in that case, psychotherapy, wasn't it?
I've heard that. How kind of psychotherapy's gone down this mad rabbit hole, and it's become more and more politicised. So
it's very worrying, because the very foundations, actually, like one's, as it were, one's psychology, mental health, physical, these things now are sort of slightly threatened, aren't they, by actually attitudes or whatever in the NHS?
Yeah, you've got to be very careful. If you're a clinician working in the NHS, you've got to be very careful what you say. You've got to be very careful what you talk about with a patient. And then equally, I think some patients are very nervous about what they can talk about. And it undermines, really you want to be able to have frank conversations about health. And it can often mean raising difficult discussions but that has become very hard. And, certain areas are very difficult to navigate now. So it does affect patient care, and it affects all sorts of things. Yeah.
How can people help? I mean, I remember last time you set up a kind of crowdfunder, didn't you, for the first case, which is ongoing.
Yeah, still ongoing. Yeah.
So there is a new appeal for this case?
Yeah. So so it's, if you Google crowd justice, Amy Gallagher, it should be the one that comes up.
Well, we'll put it under the video.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we're hoping with this case that it could be quite significant in that this is post the Supreme Court ruling, so it would be interesting to see where it lands. And because the NHS is doing this more and more to people who have gender critical views, I think it's going to be harder for them to, to not accept that there's an issue here. So we're kind of challenging and seeing where the land lies with this. But I've got quite good chances of winning. So if I can get there, it could mean that it's hard to work out how much of an influence or impact these things can have. But I think if you don't do it, you've got to. I feel like I have to challenge it, and I have to do my bit to at least when people see that someone's doing something. Yes. Because even with my first case, I still get people come up to me now when I'm shopping saying, "I'm so glad you said something," and I work in the NHS, or I'm a psychotherapist, and it means so much to see someone's doing something because it's gone crazy, and I feel like I can't say anything. So I've kind of, I've kind of gone this far. So I thought, well, I may as well do this. And
well, no, but particularly being the NHS, because we've had on this program people who are involved in the academic world, people who are involved in schools, and all the problems there, but nothing actually to do really with the NHS. So I think you've almost sort of cornered a kind of market there. But so basically, people can basically contribute to your fund by going to this.
Or if you go onto my crowd justice, but you can read more about the case, and even if you just want to share it or retweet it or put it on Facebook or whatever, that could be helpful as well.
Okay. So, well, look, Amy, will you stay around, because we've got a couple of questions for our members. We do this exclusive material for our members. Please do become a member so you can see the whole thing. But in the meantime, Amy Gallagher, all the very best with it.
Thank you, Peter.
And we'll see you next week on the show. All right? Amy Gallagher, thank you. See you next week. Bye. Our mission at the New Culture Forum is and always has been to defend and celebrate Britain's history, culture, and its people, and indeed Western civilization, at a time when both are under sustained attack. We have grown from small beginnings to become the country's most influential right-leaning cultural think tank. Our content is watched and read by some of Britain's most influential political figures. But now, we need your help. If you believe in what we do, then please do become a member. For as little as £4 a month, you can make a vital contribution to what we do. As a member of the NCF family, you will help ensure that we can continue to produce quality content online, such as our 3 weekly programs, Whittle, which is our flagship interview show, Newspeak, our panel discussion show, and Deprogrammed, which is targeted at Britain's youth. As you probably know, in addition, we produce important documentaries, such as our critically acclaimed 6-part series, The West, a stunning celebration of the history and genius of Western civilization. And our ongoing documentary series, Heresies, with hard-hitting episodes tackling subjects such as immigration, gender ideology, and BBC bias. But the New Culture Forum is much more than a YouTube channel. We don't just complain about Britain as it is, we provide real solutions and clear policies on how we can push back against the madness and restore sanity to this nation. Our presenters are now highly sought after and have become familiar faces across the media. Our prestigious annual Smith Lecture and our regional and indeed national conferences have attracted world-class speakers. Perhaps most importantly, we are the only organisation on the right of politics that has launched a national movement without actually being a political party. And uniquely, through our NCF Locals programme, we've established some 30 active branches in towns and cities right across the nation, from Edinburgh to Exeter, and with many more on the way. We're very proud of what we've achieved, and our members have made it possible. In return, our members receive access to exclusive content, invitations to private events, free or discounted tickets to our conferences and lectures, free copies of our books, and much more. I very much hope that you'll join us too by clicking the link in the description or going to our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Now is the time that we need your help. Thank you.